Hi, and welcome to this edition of America's Legacy. My name is Jeff Allen. So glad that you could join us today. And on this edition of the program, very happy to be speaking with JaMarr Brown. JaMarr Brown from Corona, California, the author of What's Your Sales Story and other books. And the man is so busy, and really, we want to just go ahead and have him tell us his story, and that's what we're going to do right now. JaMarr, first of all, nice to see you.
Jeff, good to see you as well. Thanks for coming over to my home. I appreciate it.
We appreciate the invitation. It's a beautiful home, and obviously you've worked hard for it, so we really do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. My wife isn't home yet, so you guys can keep your shoes on for now. But but if she walks in, you got to take your shoes off. But we're good. We're good for now. So.
We'll do good. We got the cameras pointed up so they won't see the fact that I got holes in my socks.
Oh,
so
we don't want to.
So there we go.
All right.
Well, JaMarr, really appreciate the time because you do, in fact, have a really tremendous story to tell. You're somebody who's very, very busy now, but, you know, all of this has just a fantastic setting. I mean, going back in your life, you have been inspired of the entire length of really throughout your career and growing up as a young person. Let's take us back now. Let's go back to the beginning. Talk to us about where you're from. I mean, you're here in Southern California. You're Southern California born and raised.
You know, Jeff, I'm a Southern California native. I grew up in San Diego, California. I have 3 brothers. You know, tremendous family. And you know, one of the things that I remember as a young child is what my parents sort of taught me, and us, because I have 3 other brothers. And my mom was all about her family. I mean, everything was about family comes first. And so she worked as a cashier at Save On Drugs her entire life. And she only worked there because she wanted to, you know, not have a job that was so busy where she couldn't be with her family and her kids. And so she always put us first. And I remember one time, when I was 13, because as a middle child, I was a typical middle child, which, you know, I always felt that I was left out, which I wasn't, but I felt that way because every time my older brother got something, you know, he was the oldest, and then my younger brother got something, he's the baby, and so you're just kind of there in the middle. And so I developed this sort of attitude and this drive to always feel like I was the underdog, even though I really wasn't, but that's what a typical middle child feels like. And so I remember my mom one day, I think it was my older brother's birthday, and she got him something, and I complained about it. And then, you know, she, you know, came to me and she said, you know, what's wrong? And I said, well, you know, I feel like I'm left out, and my older brother always gets something, my younger brother always gets something. And she kind of started to talk about her life, and she started saying, well, you know, I sacrificed everything for you guys. And I realized at that moment that, you know, she had, you know, a car that really worked. She was working crazy hours. She was sacrificing so much for us. And I asked her, after I had this sort of revelation about that, I said, you know, Mom, why do you always do everything for us? Don't you ever want to do something for yourself? And she said, son, yeah, of course I think about having a nicer car, having better clothes, living in a better house. But, you know, what I believe is that the role of a parent is to ensure that their child's life is better than their own. And that stuck with me even to this day as a parent in terms of what being a parent is all about. So my mom taught me that lesson, and my dad was more the disciplinarian of the house. You know, as a young man, he was an entrepreneur. He owned a record store. He owned a barber shop. He had his own line of hair care products. And so I remember when I was really young, just the energy he had around being an entrepreneur, just, you know, his zest for life. And then those businesses didn't work out, and he ended up working at Solar Turbines for over 30 years and retired there. But throughout his whole life, he always taught us the importance of education and the value of reading and learning. And when we would get in trouble, he would make us read a book. You know, when we would have friends over, he'd do things like ask us, what does a certain word mean? And it was a word we had never heard of, like chagrin or something like that. And he would make us go to, we had this little makeshift library in the back of our house. He would make us go, you know, get the dictionary or find a book that had that word in it, and we'd have to find the word. And then he'd say, well, put that word in a sentence. And this is what he did with me and my friends, which at the time it annoyed me like crazy because I'm like, I want to go outside and play. But that's what he had us do. And so it really taught me the value of just education and learning and reading. But I'm sure we're going to talk more about, you know, the perspective of him as an entrepreneur and how that shaped what I did with my career, but those are the two lessons that they taught me.
Well, I want to talk to you. I want to go back just a second because you talked about your mom saying that she did everything for you, and she was obviously very sincere in that. She meant every word that she said. But you were astute enough as a 13-year-old to ask her why she did that. Did it occur to you at that time also that maybe your friends and other kids that maybe you went to school with didn't have parents or didn't come from a household like you did, where you were being given some opportunities, and that their parents may not be providing for them kind of on the same level or the same way that your parents did for you?
Well, it's a great question. I think like you don't know what you don't know,
right.
And so I never felt like we were poor, because we had such a strong family. And my parents were so supportive that I always felt good about myself. As a matter of fact, my parents did send us through private school. I went to Catholic school from preschool all the way through 12th grade. And they couldn't afford it, but they worked 2 jobs at times. And my mom worked the snack bar at our high school to make extra money to keep us in that school. They kind of tell the story that even though we weren't Catholic at the time, we marked Catholic on the form because we got lower tuition. So I was Catholic for a while, even though we went to a Baptist school on weekends, our Baptist church on weekends. But to your point, my parents always opened up their home to other people. And so I never thought about the fact that most of my friends didn't have 2 parents at the house. Because they were always at our house, and my mom was always cooking for them. My dad was having them read, and we'd talk and have discussions. And so I didn't know any better. I just thought that what I had was normal. Looking back, I realized how abnormal it was to have 2 parents who were that dedicated to their kids in the household, who did all those things for other kids in the neighborhood. But at the time, I just thought that's just how life was.
Did you like school?
I did. I had a lot of friends. Here's another thing that's interesting about my background. I grew up around a lot of different cultures, and so in school, mainly in the Catholic school, it was probably about 85% Hispanic. And so I grew up really deep in the Hispanic culture. I mean, I've danced in quinceañeras. I've been to so many different events and cultural festivities and things like that. And so that was like a second family to me.
Man, you had an early appreciation for that sort of thing growing up, and you never probably questioned it very much.
Never questioned it. To me, it was like, everybody's equal, and you can celebrate everybody, and so I never thought any different. My neighborhood was predominantly African American. And so, I had African American friends, and same thing. We got along and had a great time. And then when I got to high school, it was probably about 80% Filipino, and so I was exposed to the Asian culture. Then in college, it was predominantly white, and so to me, life was just full of appreciating everyone and not looking at people any different. And so the reason why that's important is because that made me appreciate school, because I didn't think about a person's race or color. It was just, hey, these are people that I get along with, and I love going to quinceañeras, and I love going to Asian events. And so because I had that much appreciation for other cultures, it made school fun for me because I got along with everybody. As a student, I wasn't spectacular. I was a decent student. I averaged probably about a 3.4 GPA throughout my entire.
Well, that's not bad. I mean, what did you like to study? What was your favorite thing to study?
One of the things that I failed to mention earlier was, as a child, one of the things that shaped, because you asked about me being able to ask my mom that question about why was she so willing to sacrifice her own, life for her kids. Because I wasn't a great communicator when I was a kid. I was kind of shy, and so I would read a lot, and I would write people notes. And so I was really big on whether it was a girl I liked at school, I would write her a note. If my parents, if I was upset about something, I'd write a note. And so
put it in writing.
That's how I expressed myself, was through writing, which later on I became a writer, which is ironic. And so one of the subjects I really liked was history, because you could look at different events and have a whole different perspective based on how you view that event. And I realized that, usually, the person that writes the book on history usually is a person that won the war or won the battle.
Right.
But there's so many other stories and perspectives that fascinated me. What about the people you don't hear about? What about, if there was a war, you hear about the people that won, but what about, the 800,000 people that died in the war? That's 800,000 stories of people that have never been told because they didn't survive. Right. And so to me, that was fascinating. So history was a subject that fascinated me. At one point, chemistry, I thought I wanted to be a chemist. Until I failed the final. And so that kind of went out the window. But another subject that really interested in me was business in the sense of creativity. And so like advertising, and I would love to watch TV commercials, and then we'd have business classes where I would sort of relate what I was learning in business to what I saw on TV, and so things like that were really interesting to me.
So did you take that and follow through with that in college, or did you take and do something else once you got into at the college level?
Well, I was when I was finishing high school, and fortunately I was a really good student. 3.4. I'm good enough to get into all the colleges I applied for. UCLA, USC, Cal Lutheran, San Diego State.
Sure.
I was also a really good athlete in football, baseball, and basketball. And so I had scholarships to play football and baseball at different schools. And USC, I wanted to be a Trojan. That was my dream school. But I also got into a school called Whittier. And the only reason why I applied to Whittier was because a coach from a rival basketball team I played against called my family one night and said, has JaMarr selected a school yet? My dad said no. And he said, well, has he looked at Whittier? And so my dad put me on the phone, and the gentleman said, have you looked at Whittier College? I said, is that a junior college? I'd never heard of it.
Right.
And he said, no, Whittier it's a great school. Richard Nixon went there. Rhodes Scholars have gone there. Blah blah blah. And so I applied just because he told me about it.
Right.
And so I applied to Whittier, and I got into Whittier. And so my dad and I went on a college tour to look at the different schools I got into, Cal Lutheran and so forth and so on. But my mindset was on going to USC. And I had a partial baseball scholarship to go to USC. So we go to USC in the morning, and I'm ready to sign on the dotted line to go there. And then my dad said, well, you made a commitment to go see Whittier, which was an afternoon appointment. He goes, before you sign, I think you should, honor your commitment and go to Whittier. Unfortunately, both schools are in Los Angeles, so it wasn't like they were different states. So it was like an hour drive to get to Whittier. And so I reluctantly said, okay, let's go to Whittier. And the second I got on campus, it just felt right.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, Jeff. I mean, just the energy, the people, the vibe, the friendliness.
Sure.
And it just, something told me, JaMarr, go to this school. And so I turned down my scholarship to USC and went to Whittier, which is a Division III athletic school. They don't give scholarships. And so I had to take out, at the time it was $22,000 a year, which we couldn't afford. And so I had to take out student loans. I had to sign up for work study. And I walked on to the basketball team, which was my worst sport as a 5'11" guy.
Yeah.
And so it made no sense,
yeah.
except for the fact that it felt right to go there.
Yeah. And how did you do? I mean, you said that basketball wasn't your sport, but
Yeah.
I mean, did you play? Did you get many minutes?
You know what? I started. I was a starter on the there was a JV and a varsity team, so I was a starter on the JV team. We actually won. We came in like our first place our first year, and second place our second year. So we had a lot of success.
Sure.
But it's funny. I found an old video of me playing. And I also was sent a video of me playing football in high school, and I got a video of me playing basketball in college. And so the football video came in first, and I was showing that to my daughter recently, and I was a stud at football. It was like ridiculous. And then I'm looking at the basketball, and I'm like, the basketball tape, and I was literally embarrassed. I really wasn't that good. In my mind, I thought I was.
Yeah.
But the fortunate thing about Whittier was that it was such a small school.
Right.
It allowed you to get involved in things. And so I wouldn't have been able to play basketball anywhere else. To say I was a college athlete is a phenomenal thing. I actually earned a Scholar Athlete Award because my grades, I made the dean's list like my sophomore year, and I was playing basketball, and so the school gave me an academic scholarship, a Scholar Athlete scholarship, which helped out big time in tuition. And then I just, after my sophomore year, some students approached me about a program called Inroads. And I said, what is this program? And they said, you know, what do you want to do with your career? And at that point, I was thinking, well, you know, things just kind of work out in life. And to that point, you know, I hadn't really had any failures.
I think that was really kind of my next question, because a lot of people will use a JC or a community college to get their general ed out of the way, and then they'll take that and use that as a stepping stone to go into a four-year university, and then they can take and focus on their career a little bit more.
Right.
You had an interest in advertising marketing in high school, and then you went into Whittier. You felt real comfortable. Was there a point there when you started to have kind of an idea about what you wanted to do, and these other students that you met, were they able to help play a kind of a role in taking those first career steps?
Absolutely. I mean, so I knew I wanted to be successful. At what, I wasn't sure. You know, I just figured, I was a business major, marketing minor. I just figured that life would work out. And then these students, they were upperclassmen, came to me and said, you know, JaMarr, have you heard about Inroads? I said, no, I haven't heard about it. What is it? And they said, well, it's an internship program where, you know, for minority students, where if you have a certain GPA, you can apply and you get in, and they give you all this training on corporate America. And you can interview with Fortune 500 companies for summer internships. And then with the idea that as you graduate, if the internship had gone well, then they would hire you full time. And at the time, I said, well, sounds interesting. How do I get in? They said, well, you have to apply, and then we have these Saturday trainings. And as a, you know, I was a freshman in college. Saturdays were recovery from Friday night, right? and so I said, no, I'm not going to apply. And so I didn't apply that first year. And then they came back to me my sophomore year, and they said, JaMarr, you have to apply to Inroads. And I said, you know, I don't want to do this Saturday thing. And they said, well, how do you expect to be successful? And I said, well, things are just going to work out. I said, no, life isn't like that. You need people to open doors for you. You have to be in the right position so that people know who you are to get the right opportunities. And once again, because at a young age, I had been taught the importance of listening, that stuck with me. And so I said, that's a good point. And so I applied to the Inroads program, got into the program, which was phenomenal. And then, long story short, Allergan Pharmaceuticals hired me as their very first summer intern. And the only reason why I went to Allergan as opposed to other companies was because it said the intern will travel. I had never traveled. And so I figured, you know, why not go to a company that's going to let me travel? I didn't know what Allergan Pharmaceuticals was. I didn't know what a pharmaceutical even was at the time.
Or an Allergan.
Or an Allergan. I had no clue. And
right.
And then there's the story from there gets absolutely phenomenal. But that's how I got my internship at Allergan.
And this is really an important place really to kind of jump off and take a deeper dive, really, because Allergan plays such a phenomenal and vital role in your history, in your story. Tell us about when you were hired on by the folks at Allergan to take a position with the company, your first paid position with them.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and so I remember when I got the offer from Allergan, I was really excited. And they said, well, you know, your manager will give you a call. And so it was like an early Friday morning, I don't know, 7:30 in the morning. I'm still in the bed sleep. The phone rings. And the person goes, you know, can I speak to JaMarr Brown? I'm like, oh, this is him. and she goes, well, this is Jane Wolf with Allergan. I'm like, oh shit. And so I perk up out of bed. I think I had a bottle of water splash my face to wake up. And I said, oh, you know, and she goes, well, you know, congratulations on getting the internship, you know, with Allergan. And she goes, I'm going to be your supervisor for the summer. She goes, I'll send you an email with the list of things you're going to do and the whole outline. Really excited to have you on board. And then she asked me a question that shaped my life as a leader. Because at the time, I was expecting to go there and do whatever she told me to do. I was willing to go in there and work, you know, overtime, work crazy hours. If she said get water, you know, make coffee, you know, collate papers, I didn't care. I'm like, this is a great opportunity. But when she asked me this question, it shaped everything for me. She said, well, I've told you what I want you to get out of this internship, you know, what your plan is for the summer. Because what do you want to get out of it?
You weren't even prepared for that, were you?
I had no clue. Yeah. I said, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And she goes, no. She goes, I want you to really think about what you want to get out of this, because success for me is not just what I get from you, is what you get for yourself. And I was like, man, are bosses like that?
Not all of them.
Not all of them. I came to
right,
find out that
right,
no,
yeah.
but
That's right.
and so and she said, oh, she goes, take some time and just think about what you want to get out of the internship. Send me an email and we'll put together a plan. And so what I did was I thought, well, I want to learn, and so I said I would like to meet as many people as possible and schedule interviews with them. And so she put together a list of about 20 people, from the CEO down to the associate director of marketing. And she said, JaMarr, here are their names. And she goes, it's your responsibility between now and the end of the summer to schedule 30-minute informational interviews with them. And I said, fine. And so I went into the internship. I did all kind of copying, collating, running around, but I would schedule these interviews, and I was sitting down with the CEO of Allergan Pharmaceuticals, asking him questions about how he got his position and how can he help me. And it was absolutely amazing.
It's unbelievable, but I don't think that anybody who has ever really tried or given any thought to talking to people with a company that they'd like to be with, or maybe even one that they're not even sure about, that they're not familiar with, how difficult it is to land opportunities like that, just to talk to people in positions of influence. And you had basically handed on a silver platter, here are the names of all of our top officers of the company. You get in touch with them, sit down with them, and have these informational interviews. Would you consider that really kind of your leg up in as far as getting in with the company on a permanent basis at that time? Did you even give that any thought?
No, all I wanted to do, honestly, Jeff, was to do the absolute best I could. I wasn't really, thinking how great of an opportunity it was, or I was thinking if I go in there and do the best job I can do, then we'll see what happens. And so when she said, what do you want to get out of it? It triggered a thought in my mind, well, wow, I want to get a lot out of it, but I also want to make her proud. And so when I go into these interviews, I need to make sure I'm prepared with the right questions so that they can say, wow, Jane, great hire. JaMarr is special. And so it wasn't about me.
Right.
It was about making her proud and then learning. And so, but that ability to do that, I think, really goes back to the fact that how I was raised. I was raised by parents who said, always go out and feel good about yourself. Always go out with confidence.
So what did you get out of that internship then? How did that change your life?
Well, the first summer, two things changed my life. One was I got the chance to have the door open into what it was like to be a corporate executive. I speaking to the CEO and by speaking to the head of marketing and the head of sales. And so it really gave me a broad perspective on corporate America, which it inspired me. The second thing that happened was, because it was a sales internship, and so I got a chance to sit in on sales training classes. And I was just inspired by the salespeople. The way that they were able to talk so clearly and just they were so motivated and passionate and they dressed so well. And I wanted to be like that. Yeah. And so watching them and being in class with them for 2 weeks at a time inspired me. And it was funny because at one point they said, JaMarr, would you like to try to role play? And I tried and I failed miserably, because I couldn't really even say these technical names of these right. products, right?
Sure.
And thankfully they were just very patient. I said, what do you like? What do you like? I said, well, I like basketball. They said, well, what's your favorite basketball shoe? I said, oh, Jordans. They said, well, do you like Jordans better than Converse? I said, sure. I said, well, you sell us Jordan shoes versus Converse. And so when they were selling their technical medical products, they would have me go up in front of the room and sell, this shoe versus that shoe. Yeah. And one of the things about that experience, what I think is really important, is I was treated so well there. I never felt like an outsider. Even though my first day in the internship, they had business cards for me. I had my own cubicle. People came up and said, welcome to the company. And so I thought that was what corporate America was all about, where everybody gets along, everybody supports everybody.
Right.
And if you do a great job, then you get recognized. And so that's how that first summer was. It was absolutely amazing. And then they invited me back to come back the next summer to actually take on a sales territory.
Did you have any idea that you would actually be working for that company, even after the internships? Or was that something that you wanted from the beginning? Hey, if I'm happy here, this is a good place to be.
I was hopeful,
yeah.
But I never took it for granted. I never thought, well, my boss likes me. I've done a good job so far. They're going to hire me. I never looked at it that way. I looked at it as I'm going to go in every single day, do the absolute best I can, and hopefully it will work out. And so when I was invited back the second summer, as a 19-year-old kid, they basically gave me a list of 65 optometrists down in San Diego. They said, we want you to go down there this summer and sell this contact lens care solution they had just launched.
You're 19?
I'm 19 years old.
Okay.
And they said, go down to San Diego and sell this product. And once again, I took it, upon me to go, you know what? I'm given this opportunity. I want to make my boss proud. I want to go out there and do the absolute best, that I could do. And so I had a company car, had an expense account. I bought some of these ratty suits, and I'm there in San Diego going to these optometrist offices, saying, trying to pitch this this contact lens care solution to these doctors. And
well, how'd you do?
You know what? I don't know if I sold much, but I got to eat for effort. I just thought I got up every single day and I was pushing it. I was driving it every single day. I was up early. I stayed out late. I didn't take it for granted. And I had a mentor that was also down in San Diego who would go with me from time to time, and he gave me really good feedback. The doctors, said some really good things about me. So it all worked out. And then at the end of that summer, my boss came to me and said, JaMarr, it was a summer before my senior year of college, said, JaMarr, we'd like to give you a full-time offer to join Allergan when you graduate from college.
Wow. Now, do you remember how you felt at that time? And you remember that call that you made to your parents after you got that offer?
It was one of my proudest moments of my whole life, because knowing that, my parents had raised me in a way that allowed me to go through that internship program, to get into this corporate world that they had never been exposed to themselves. And their son went in there and did a phenomenal job and then got an offer to join a company, which I didn't know how big Allergan was at the time, which turned out to be one of the most successful pharmaceutical companies in the world, was just incredible. Another thing that really inspired me was the fact I would be able to now help my family, because I got a great offer. I was going to get bonuses, and I would be able to, help my family do different things financially. And so it was one of the greatest moments of my life.
So JaMarr, given that your folks are really excited, you're excited. Were you a success right off the bat? Let's talk about that.
You know what? Here's what's funny about that. For some reason, my ego kicked in. And I went from the lessons I've been taught about being humble and working hard and all those things to, now I've made it. I've arrived. I'm God's gift to sales, because one of the things we didn't talk about was at Whittier, I was also Black Student Union president and student body president. Dean's List, played basketball. I went back for my senior year with this job offer in hand. None of my friends had a job. And so
all of these accomplishments, and so you couldn't lose.
I couldn't lose. And I thought there was no way. I thought it would just work out. And so I did work hard, but my purpose for working hard went from, making my boss proud and doing right by my family and all those things to making money and getting promoted. And I remember a conversation I had with my mentor from Inroads right before I started with Allergan, and we had lunch, and she said, JaMarr, congratulations on your offer with Allergan, and she said, what do you want to do with your career? And my ego had kicked in at that point. I said, I want to make as much money as possible, get promoted as quickly as possible, and be the CEO of Allergan Pharmaceuticals one day. And she looked at me with a puzzled look. She goes, no, what do you want to do with your career? And I thought she didn't hear me. And so I said, I want to make as much money as possible, get promoted as quickly as possible, be the CEO of Allergan
Honest answers,
Pharmaceuticals
right?
one day.
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
And then she said something I'll never forget. I've told this story 1,000 times, because she said, I'm not asking you what you want to do. I'm asking you who you want to become. And she went on to say, because throughout your career, you're going to do so many different things that you plan for, like in this pharmaceutical sales job, and certain things that will happen that you didn't plan for. You're going to have ups and downs, and highs and lows. But one thing that will never change is you are the person doing those things. So what do you want your legacy to be? What impact do you want to have on people? What mark do you want to make in your career and in the world? Well,
She just introduced a whole new dynamic. I mean, something to you you'd never really given much thought to, right? I mean, did that add pressure, by the way?
You know what? I dismissed it.
Yeah.
because at that point,
Yeah.
I'm like legacy and purpose. I'm like, I'm like, I'm going to make money and get promoted. And and in my mind, I had never failed.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was thinking, what is she talking about? This doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to go out and be successful. And so I went out and I worked my tail off. The first year I worked super hard. My focus though was getting things from people. You know, I looked at doctors who I was selling products to as their importance was at the level of the business they did with me. The more business, the more valuable you were. I didn't think about the patients that my products were for. I didn't think about that. I was selling glaucoma medications and antibiotics for eye care conditions. I didn't think about any of that stuff. And so, and the territory was ranked 123 out of 128 when I first took it over in Los Angeles, South Central, South LA, East LA, Compton, Watts, the King Drew Medical Center. So it was considered the worst part of LA. And that was my territory. And so they didn't really expect much from me, but I told everybody I was going to be the #1 salesperson at Allergan because I thought I was going to. And to me, there was nothing in my past that would, make me think any different. And so after the first year, there were layoffs. And we went down to 98 salespeople. And I finished, pretty much towards the bottom. And I thought to myself, okay, I just need to work harder. I need to make more sales calls. I need to dive more into the technical aspects of our products. And so I went out that second year, worked even harder, did more programs, saw more doctors. And at the end of that year, guess where I was ranked?
Probably closer to the top, right? I would imagine? No, you weren't. Okay.
I was 91 out of 98.
Well, you weren't. You were 123 out of 128 before, so 91 out of 98. That's not moving up.
Well, but remember, there were layoffs.
That's true.
We went down from 128 down to 98. So
forgot about the layoffs.
Yeah. So I literally hadn't moved in 2 years. So a new boss comes on board, and he sits me down. And he just says, my numbers were in the toilet. He says, JaMarr, your sales numbers pretty much suck. I said, yeah, I know. He goes, he was like, well, why? And I said, well, it's a bad territory. LA is such a bad territory. The managed care environment is not good and all these things. He goes, no, I don't think that's it. He goes, what do you think the problem is? I said, well, it's a bad territory. I mean, everybody knows that. It's LA and, nobody's been successful here. And if I can't do it, nobody can. And he pretty much said, no, I think you're the problem. I don't think you're cut out for this company. I don't think you're cut out to be in sales.
And did your stomach drop at that? Your heart and everything just kind of drop about 5-6 feet at that point in time? Or did you just kind of blow that off? This guy's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, no. I mean, at that point, I realized I was a failure. And it was the first time.
So you believed him?
Well,
you believed what he said?
I knew it was true, but my ego didn't let me accept it.
Okay.
My ego went to, no, it's his fault. He doesn't like me. The compensation plan isn't right. The territory is a bad territory. And so I went to all those areas because I was protecting myself from the truth, which was, no, I was the problem.
So there's a lot of rationalization going on using all these other reasons for the failure.
Yes.
And so he was forcing you to kind of look internally, to kind of internalize this stuff. But I mean, at what point did you finally think, maybe this guy's right, or maybe I need somebody else's perspective?
Well, I didn't. I mean, what happened was, I didn't really get a chance to say much after he said I was burned out because he gave me a written warning and said, sign this. If you don't improve your sales results, you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the end of our discussion. So I walked out of that meeting pissed off. I walked out of that meeting not liking him even more. And I say that, but he was actually, one of the best people that ever come into my life because he told me the truth and forced me to look myself in the mirror. And so he was actually a great mentor of mine. I just didn't see it that way at the time. At the time, I kind of said, well, you know what? If Allergan doesn't want me, if my boss doesn't like me, if the territory is that bad, then I'm going to leave Allergan.
And did you start looking around?
I started looking around. I did a number of different things. As a matter of fact, the book I wrote, What's Your Sales Story, gives a whole story. So I won't tell you the whole story now. But I applied for my master's. I thought I would just, go back to school. And guess what? I didn't get in. Another failure. I thought I would go into, radio and television. I went to KGLS radio station and looked at getting a job there. Guess what? Didn't get hired. I looked at opening up a restaurant at one point and then realized, I don't have what it takes to open a restaurant. I started a public access television show and then realized that, and I wasn't making any money. I was desperate to do something different. I even applied with a company who was a competitor to Allergan for a position selling the rival's product in the same territory. And I remember that when I went for the interview, the person pretty much said, what are your rankings at Allergan? I couldn't lie. I said, well, they're at the bottom. He said, well, why? I said, well, because it's a bad territory. He said, well, how do you expect to sell this product in that same territory if you can't sell that product? I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. So needless to say, I didn't get the job.
Honesty killed that opportunity, really, for you, Yeah.
I should have lied.
Next time, just go in a little white lie.
I have a hard time not being honest.
No, I understand that.
But so anyway, so I was at a very low point. I was at the lowest point of my life at that point.
So what changed? I mean, what was it that happened that all of a sudden sent you in a different direction? Because, I mean, did you consider yourself at that point kind of having hit bottom?
I was rock bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, I was depressed. I called it a professional depression. I didn't want to tell anybody that I was failing because, everyone saw me as a successful person and, JaMarr can do anything. And there I was about to get fired. I'm like, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my friends. I just suffered through it and stopped answering my phone and was going to work, but I wasn't there. And then a couple of things happened. One of the things that changed was the VP of sales came out to work with me. And I literally thought he was coming out to take my keys and fire me.
That's the VP of sales at Allergan now.
At Allergan.
You're still there.
Still at Allergan,
okay.
right. Still at Allergan, still 91 out of 98 with a written warning about to get fired. And so usually when the VP of sales would come out to work with somebody, it was, either promote them or fire them. And I knew I wasn't getting promoted. So I was ready to get fired. So I picked him up from the airport. We drove to like a coffee shop and he started asking me, I said, JaMarr, your sales numbers are pretty much in the toilet. Why is that? And I went into my whole diatribe about, well, it's a bad territory, it's LA, blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, whose responsibility is it? I said, well, it's a bad territory. I mean, the managed care thing is not right. The compensation plan is wrong. He must have asked me that question 5 times in a row. And I knew the answer he wanted me to give him, but I thought if I gave him that answer, he was going to fire me. So I didn't want to give him that answer. After the 5th time, I said, you know what? I'm done anyway. When he said, whose responsibility is it? I said, it's my responsibility. And he put his arm on my shoulder and he says, now I can teach you something. And the lessons he started to teach me, now that I was open to learning, were absolutely tremendous. And ironically, it was the same lessons I had learned as a kid growing up in San Diego, which was we went to a doctor's office and I was there to sell my products. And I wanted him to help me. And he spent the whole time asking questions about the doctor's family and his life and his business. I'm thinking, why are we here wasting time? I'm about to get fired and you're talking about how many kids do you have? Yeah. And so we walked out, and he goes, oh, how do you think it went? I'm like, it was terrible. I'm like, I'm about to get fired. I mean, I wanted you to sell something.
Yeah.
And he goes, what school did the doctor go to? I don't know. How many kids does he have? I don't know. How long has he been in business? I don't know. He goes, that's your problem. He goes, you're so worried about yourself that you're missing getting to know other people. If they don't know that you care about them, they're not going to care about you. And so he kept teaching me lesson after lesson. And so that started to open up my whole mind to, wow, that's how I was raised, to do what? Be curious about other people, to listen, to show respect for people, to when you go to somebody's house, you're in their house. And so you take off your shoes, you follow their customs, you learn about them.
You build relationships.
You build relationships as opposed to making it all about you. Mm-hmm. So he taught me that day. Another thing that happened, which was life-changing, which was the most pivotal moment of my career, was I went to this doctor's office. And let me backtrack a little bit because this is an important aspect of the story. So at one point, I decided to call my mother because I was going to resign because, even though I had that epiphany with the VP of sales, I was still 91 out of 98. I mean, I was still at the bottom. And so I called my mom and I had my resignation letter. It was, at that point, we had typewriters. We didn't have,
Sure, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was back in the days.
Sure, we all used one. We all would.
And so I typed up my resignation letter. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, look, this is what's going on. I'm about to get fired and I think I'm just going to quit. And I had gone to this doctor's office before and he kicked me out because I was just a jerk to him and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm just done. And she goes, well, son, tell me what happened. I said, well, I went into his office and I was there to get business. He said he was busy and he didn't have time for me. And I said, I'm desperate. I need to get business. And so I can't deal with this. And she goes, well, he goes, son, I've never been in sales, but, I've always taught you that when you go to somebody's house, you follow their rules. And so if he told you, like, well, one thing, I didn't wear a tie one day. She goes, if he told you to wear a tie, wear a tie. If he tells you to come between these hours, go between those hours. I'm like, well, Mom, he's going to win. She goes, son, don't let your ego get in the way of your success. And I hung up the phone. I hung up on it. I was mad. But the whole idea of don't let your ego get in the way of your success played over and over in my mind. And so the reason why I share that story is because I went back to that doctor's office who had kicked me out that morning because I wasn't wearing a tie. And I went back there, and I kept hearing my mom's words, don't let your ego get in the way of your success. You're in his house. Follow his rules. And so I told myself, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to follow all of his rules. And whatever he tells me to do, I'm just going to do it. And so I went back with a tie on, and I walk in there, and the office staff is like, man, you're back? And I said, yeah. And I said, is Dr. Peace here? And they said, he's with the patient. And I said, okay, well, I'll wait. And I hear them like chattering, like, oh, this is going to be ugly. And so he walks out, and he's all, he looks at me. Sees I'm wearing a tie. He goes, the fact that you came back tells me more about your character than anything you could have told me about your product. And he goes, I'm going to give you a chance. If your product works, I'll start using it. Well, I knew the product worked, and then he became one of my biggest customers. But not the last pivotal moment, but another pivotal moment, which is really important, is with the same doctor. I went there, a couple of days later, because he was a really high potential physician. And I went there, and I was once again there to sell my products and meet with him. And I saw him in the patient room with a patient, and this African-American lady, elderly lady. And they were kind of finishing up, and he pointed her in my direction. And I'm there with my suit and tie once again, and she starts walking towards me, and I'm still thinking, I don't want to talk to a patient. I'm here to get business. So I kind of turned away from her. And then she came up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, I hear you're a pharmaceutical sales rep. I said, yes. And she goes, well, Dr. P says I'm taking one of your products. I said, really? So I perked up because I'm thinking dollar signs, called Alphagan for glaucoma. And I said, how's it working for you? And every time I say this, I tear up because I would never forget that experience. And she said, it's not too good. I said, well, I was in shock, like, why? Because I thought our product was the best in the world. She goes, well, it's not the product, not the medication. It's because I'm on a fixed income, and I can't afford all my medications. And so she put out a bag of pills. She goes, I have to decide what pills I'm going to buy each month. And because glaucoma doesn't hurt, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And so I haven't been buying my medication, and I've missed my appointments for the last 2 years. I'm on there's a taxi outside because I can't get to my appointments, and I have to, need a taxi to get me here and there. And she goes, I found out today that I'm blind in one eye and 50% blind in the other eye. And it broke my heart. It literally broke my heart. And I thought to myself, it's not about making money and getting promoted or being the CEO of a company. It's about helping patients. That's my job. And so in that instant, I changed my purpose, from making money, getting promoted, being the CEO of Allergan, to helping little old ladies. And I was relentless. And there were a couple of things that I started to do that I could have done prior that I didn't. We had programs for indigent patients that couldn't afford medications. They get it for free.
Like that patient,
Like the patient. But guess what? I never offered the program because it wasn't making me any money. Yeah. I could have supported drug screenings for doctors to screen patients for glaucoma, to help them find out their condition sooner. I never did because I'm like, that's wasting money, wasting my time. And so from that day forward, I started doing everything in my power to better educate myself on the resources Allergan had to take care of patients like that, to look at working in those communities that were devastated by glaucoma, that were really poor, and to help them have programs to identify their conditions sooner, to have better education around the importance of taking their medications, even though the disease doesn't hurt. I became a business person for my doctors because I figured if I can help their business grow, then they can see more patients and use more of the products that can help their patients preserve their vision. Because can you imagine not being able to see your grandchildren because of a condition that was preventable? Right.
Yeah. It'd be tough to do. Yeah.
It's tough to do. Yeah. And so literally, Jeff, I stopped looking at the sales rankings and the numbers and and this egotistical aspect of sales, and I was all about helping little ladies, helping little ladies, helping little ladies. And a year later, after being on a verbal warning, being told I was burned out, not got out for sales, so look for a different job, with that change in perspective, I was on stage as the #1 salesperson at Allergan Pharmaceuticals.
That's unbelievable. A year later.
A year later.
And so you're talking about, during the course of that year, you're talking about honing these skills. You're talking about building relationships, putting the patients first, helping doctors to grow their business because you're providing them with products that work, and in finding ways to help the indigent and people who can't afford these products get them.
Absolutely.
So that they can be treated.
Absolutely.
And in 1 year's time, you're on the stage as #1 salesperson at Allergan.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely, it's unbelievable. It's mind-blowing. I mean, it's 365 days. I mean, it's not a lot of time to go from essentially, pardon me, worst to first. I mean, it's really what it was.
Yeah, well, and the beauty of it is I can't make these stories up, and so luckily somebody recorded my speech of when I won Salesperson of the Year, and I talk about my shift in perspective, how that led to my success. Because here's the deal. Here's what I teach professionals. We can all have the same script, the same process, the same system, but why is one person extremely successful and another person not? Even though they're saying the same words, have the same system and the same script. You know what the difference is?
You tell me.
Their purpose. Why we do what we do. Is your purpose big enough that emotionally charges people to react to you a different way? And so I'm living proof of that. And I didn't read that in a book. I didn't look at watch or listen to a Tony Robbins audio program and here it is. This is my life. I mean, this is what happened. And so we had the same products. We had the same competition. It was the same territory, the same challenges. Matter of fact, half the customers that literally kicked me out of their office over the course of that 2-year period. So I'm going back into the same customers with the same script, but my heart is different.
Yeah.
My attitude is different. My purpose is different. And I think they started to see that. And they knew that I was committed to the same thing they were committed to, which is taking care of patients. And the response was, phenomenal. So that's how it happened.
But we know that this kind of success doesn't come without some kind of support. And we've talked a lot about you, but I know that, behind every good man, as they say, it's a bit of a cliche, it's a good woman. And of course, we talked about your mom, but you've also got some very special people in your life here. I mean, we're here in your home. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's over the course of my whole career, and I know one of the things that we're probably going to talk about is do I have any regrets? And the one regret I have in my career, because on my tombstone I wanted to read, JaMarr Brown, live life with no regrets. So I am driven to not have any regrets. That's why I do a lot of things that a lot of people may be afraid to do, because I don't want to be someone that says, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that. But the one regret I have is that when I was recruited away from...
Sorry, JaMarr. Internet's coming. The one regret you have.
Okay, really? Oh, so the one regret I have is when I was being recruited away from Allergan. I've been there 13 years, built a phenomenal career, was a regional sales director, one of 5 in the country. But I started to at that point in time, my daughter was getting older, and it was at a point where I didn't quite know if I wanted to stay there for the rest of my career, hadn't worked anywhere else, and I wanted to spend more time at home, and so I didn't know what to do, because I didn't have any other perspective around work outside of, hey, you're a corporate executive, do your job, and that type of thing. So when I was being recruited away, I didn't talk to anybody at the company. Whereas before, there were so many countless people who had helped me along the way, who had pulled me aside and said, JaMarr, hey, buddy, you got to look at things differently. Hey, let me tell you about this or that. And we can go on and on about those individuals, but there's dozens of people who were like that to me, who were like father figures, friends, mentors. And for whatever reason, I just sort of walked away without talking to anybody. And so if I could do anything different in my career, I would have taken the time to talk to the people that have supported me for literally 13 years of my life, from the time I was a wet behind the ears intern to regional sales director. The way that relates to your question, Jeff, is this. My family has always been that to me. I've always had such a strong support system where I can go to my mom, I can go to my dad, I can go to my brothers, I can go to my wife. And my daughter is getting older. Now I can go to her and she understands what's going on. And so everything I've done, I don't take credit for any of my successes whatsoever. I really don't. I don't think I'm brilliant. I don't think I'm anything special. The only thing I take credit for is that I listen to people. I'm insanely curious. I respect people, and I apply what they tell me. And fortunately, I've been surrounded by so many great people who have told me so many good things that I've listened to and applied, and voila, here we are. So that's really the value of the support system I've had, and I would be nowhere and would not be here at all without that strong family support system.
JaMarr, the fact is we could probably sit here and we can probably talk another couple of hours and just be absolutely riveted, right, because you've got so much of your story here that people really should hear, and they can learn more about it in some ways I want you to tell us about. But as we've got only a few minutes, tell us what's next for JaMarr Brown. You've come a long way. You've done a lot of things. You've accomplished a lot. But what's next?
Well, I think what's next is based on my two sort of driving purposes in my life right now. One purpose is to help professionals uncover, unlock, and unleash their potential. Because of the success I've had and because of the challenges I've dealt with and what I've gone through, it's given me the perspective to be a bridge for other professionals. And so I'm driven to help other professionals sort of get their ego out of the way of their success, uncover what is holding them back from being the person they're put in this world to be, from having a legacy. And so I'm doing that in a number of ways, in addition to my personal legacy, which is to personal purpose, which is to leave a legacy for my daughter. As you know, because you know me, I've kept a journal for her since she was born, so for the past 15 years. And I have literally maybe 15 volumes of this journal that I write about my life. And so I encourage people to do that. So how's that driving my career? So I've written several books. What's Your Sales Story talks about how I went from last to first place at Allergan Pharmaceuticals. A book called You're Ugly, which is it's a children's book, mm-hmm, which teaches kids about the power of their minds so that they're not affected by verbal bullying. Another book I wrote last year is called Break It Down Brown, Volume 1, which is all about taking the things that we all deal with in life, whether it's parenting or professional or being a professional, and breaking it down to what is the significance of the things that happen in our lives, like the stories we talked about, where somebody tells you something and you could either dismiss it or you can internalize it and go, what is this really trying to tell me? And so I looked at different things about like that, which is a part of the book, Break It Down Brown. The two areas of focus right now, from a professional standpoint, is being a motivational speaker, inspirational speaker, and the main talk that I give now is called Your Purpose-Driven Career. It's how to connect your purpose to your daily activities as a professional to unlock your potential, which is exactly what happened to me throughout my career. Once I got centered on the patient, the little lady is my purpose, my entire career changed. So I want to help professionals learn their purpose and connect that to their daily activities. The second thing is really around helping people better communicate through their selling. And the program I've written for that is called Selling in Color, which is a 60-page manual which goes through my entire 20-plus year experience in sales and all the tricks of the trade and all the mindsets and the way to get to know a customer story and how to understand personality profiles to help salespeople and sales organizations once again unlock their potential in a huge way. And so I train companies and individuals on that program all the time. I license it to companies, and it's called Selling in Color. So the purpose-driven career is a motivational talk that I'm really focused on. And then from a business standpoint, it's really continuing to launch Selling in Color to help professionals unlock their potential as a professional.
And as we wrap up here, if there was just one piece of advice or a tip, guidance that you could offer anybody watching right now who's had a chance to hopefully enjoy this conversation, I know that I have, right, what would that one thing be to help them improve their situation or maybe their outlook?
Wow, that's a that's a big question.
Should I get back to you on that next video?
You know what? Okay. There's so many things I could say. If I were to boil it down to one thing, I would say, think about your legacy. Because that encapsulates how you want people to view you, how you want to treat other people, where you want your career to go, how you want to be seen as a professional, as a person. And so I actually developed a legacy document which breaks down every aspect of my life, and I wrote out how do I want my life to be as a professional, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a spiritual person. And that's actually available. Then we can probably give people the link to download a copy of that. But once you have that, it will define your whole life. And you just wake up every single day and live as close as you can according to that legacy, not looking at what you haven't done, but just saying, you know what, all I have is now. I'm going to do the best I can each and every single day. I think if everybody does that, then you'll be living the legacy that you can love. And
it's never really too late to be able to make those types of changes in order to kind of improve your perspective and improve the direction, go from maybe this way to that way, to the positive direction, head the right way.
Absolutely.
JaMarr, can't thank you enough. We really do appreciate
Jeff,
it.
Thank you so much. It was
Great
a pleasure.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. That's JaMarr Brown, once again featured on this edition of America's Legacy. My name is Jeff Allen. Until next time, thanks so much for watching.